Trail Joe here, bringing you another review on the rocks. Today we're taking a look at the Easy Turn Signals kit from easyturnsignals.com or ledtsk.com. We've got their business card here. This is going to be one of the steps we need to make our RZR street legal. What you need to be street legal will vary in your state, but most commonly you need turn signals, a horn, some sort of lit license plate or registration plate, and mirrors at a bare minimum, along with eye protection and seat belts and the common stuff. So we chose to go with this kit because they really give you a lot of options that you can pick and choose how you want to configure your setup. They have LEDs that can operate as running lights versus just turn signals. You have a variety of control mechanisms, whether it be a switch on the panel or something on the stock like we've chosen here. So we've selected quite a few of the options. They're not all shown here right now, but we started off with the small LED running lights and turn signal kit, which is their 107-SM. This gives us the 3-wire LEDs, which in the basic kit you get 4, 2 red and 2 orange. Each one of these do have 3 leads because they do run as both a turn signal kit and a running light. Then you get flashers, a dash switch. In this case, the dash switch is going to be used for the running lights function. We're probably going to end up replacing this with the Contura switch just so it matches the other switches on our panel. Then you get to choose how you're going to turn your turn signals on and off. This is kind of their deluxe option. This is a very solid, very heavy duty. I mean, it's could be used as a weapon if you could disconnect it fast enough, and if tanks had turn signals, I'd imagine this would be the type that a tank would use. It also does have hazard flashers, so you can turn those on and off, or you can go with a simple dash button. This is one of the more simple dash rocker, I should say. This is one of the more upgraded options. And then you do pick a mounting kit that's specific to your vehicle, so you mount this to the column. Other options that you can add on are additional LEDs. So by default on their selection process when you're checking out, you can choose either just the single set of LEDs, a double set, or we went with a triple set of LEDs. And then you can also pick to have dash indicators, whether you have a single dash indicator or 2, so you can see if you've left your turn signals on. You don't want to leave those on while you're running down the road and not turning. There is a light that will flash here as well on the stock to get your attention, but we're going to put these right in front of our face so we won't be able to miss it. And then another option that they give is a wiring kit to make your life a little bit easier, in that it includes most of what you need to get this installed. The wiring kit is an optional item. This way, if you want to provide your own wiring or you already have your own wiring, you don't have to necessarily use what they provide, but it is actually a pretty good deal for the amounts and types of wire that you get with it. The only thing that I feel may be missing is a gray wire, just from reading through the instructions, but once we get installing, we'll take a look and see how everything goes. We've got quite a few butt connectors, a couple of ring terminals, a couple of spade terminals in there, and then a 4-wire for running to the front and back. These are all 18 gauge, and they're anywhere from 10 to 20 feet of wire in each color and size. Now, this kit does run entirely independent of the factory lights, so there are some kits out there that will use the factory brake lights and will enable a flashing function on those for the turn signals. Really only the drawback, to me, there are 2 drawbacks there that I wanted to avoid. One is you're tying into the factory system, and some people claim that could void your warranty. That's probably less of a concern to me, but the factory tail lights are designed to either be on or off. So if you're using the turn signal function, your brake light function may only be working on one side. So we wanted to keep the full brake light, full rear running light functionality, and simply add on more lights. These little tiny lights, I'm hoping we can find some nice locations to mount them, that they'll look pretty nice. I think the more visibility you can get on most off-road vehicles or even motorcycles made for the road, the better. The more you can stand out, the more visible you can be, the better. So we're going to add some lights. We may not use them all, but we're going to get started and start walking you through the install. So to begin the install of our turn signals, we have to mount the LEDs in the front and the back. We've got 3 mounted here in the front. One of the things that you've got to keep in mind is visibility as far as where you want them. And then if you're planning on putting on a bumper, make sure that the LEDs won't be behind one of the bumpers, bars, or other elements, so you'll be blocking them. So we've gone ahead and chose to put these here. The other thing you need to keep in mind is you need to make sure that you can get at the wiring once they are in place. We'll go ahead and show you how to get these installed when we do the rear. Okay, so we're going to go through the steps of mounting these. It is pretty simple and straightforward. You just have to drill a couple of holes. We like to put down this blue masking tape, just a little bit easier to make marks on. We like to put, this top mark was basically a trial to see if we liked where that was at, which kind of held the LED up there in the grommet. We decided to go a little bit lower. Now the instructions state to use a hole saw. But we like to use these step drill bits. We start with a smaller one so it'll hopefully walk a little less, and then we go to a 3/4 inch one. You definitely do have to make sure you've got the clearance behind here. And that gives us a 3/4 inch hole. And once we peel off the tape, it's a nice clean hole on both sides. Next up, we're going to take our LED and we're going to remove this rubber grommet. They can be on there a little stiff, so just work your way around till it pops out. And these aren't, the grommet themselves aren't directional, but there is a little M that's the manufacturer's logo. Just for consistency, we're going to put those up and pop the grommet in there. Then we're going to feed the wires through and the plastic piece, which just fits. And then on the LEDs themselves, they are a little bit directional. You can perhaps see that there's a couple of striations on there. The manufacturer's name, which I believe is Maxima, is right along the top, so we want to face that upwards. And this is just for appearance. And then you just press fit it in. And you make sure we've got access to the back. We've got 5 more to do on the rear, and then we're finished mounting the LEDs for the turn signals. And the rear, what we found was easier is if we just simply took off the rear piece here, the plastic where we had the LEDs mounted, because the spacing was a little tight to try to do it with it in there. And we're also going to use some waterproof or some heat shrink spade connectors, quick disconnects, so we can take this off in the future if we need to, just to make it easier rather than using butt connectors. So we basically have to combine all of our white wires. Try and get them all nice and even, and then we're going to use a 14 to 16 gauge spade connector, and these ones do require a little bit longer length lead, which is why we stripped off a little bit more. So push those in as far as they'll go. And then this particular crimping tool is designed just for these heat shrink guys, so we'll go ahead and crimp that down. Regular crimper will work as well, but sometimes it'll tear the heat shrink tubing. And then all we have to do is use a heat gun or whatever you have if you're using a lighter or such. We're just going to try to heat it evenly around until the adhesive flows out the bottom of the connector. Next we'll do the other wires, joining all the blacks together and then joining all the reds together. So now that we've got all of these on and the heat shrink shrunk down, we're going to go ahead and wrap some electrical tape around these and these just to help hold them together, give them a little more abrasion resistant, and try to make sure we don't create a pinch hazard when we put this all back in. Not really necessary, but makes it look a little bit cleaner. So we've gone ahead and finished wrapping these up, and we can still see the color coding. That's just going to help protect it from getting pinched with a stray wire or anything like that. So we're at the rear driver's side of the vehicle, and we've started some of the wiring. If you purchase their wiring kit, they're going to provide a length of 18 gauge 4 conductor cable like this in a single sheath, specifically made for the rear, so you only have to run one cable up to the front of your vehicle. This we're going to run along the frame member and just follow the frame member and down along the rocker panels where we can keep it protected, and then up towards the switch. the turn signal switch in the front. But I thought I'd show you what we did. Since we have the back end off, we decided to go ahead and just tie in, not really tie in, but run the wires along with the factory wiring harness. So this is the 4 conductor coming out. We've got white, black, green, and red. The red we're just going to pass straight through to the other side. That's basically the high power signal for the turn signal on the passenger side. The green will be for the turn signal on the driver's side. The black in here is the lower power for the running lights, if you've got that option. And then they're using white for ground. So we're going to put spade connectors on here, and we'll show you what the finished setup looks like before we plug it all in. It may just be a photograph though, simply because we're going to be getting into some tight spots once we start connecting this back up and behind the panel. And then moving over to the rear passenger side, again we just followed the factory harness and we used the loom that was already in place and just ran the 3 additional cables that we need for this side. Again, we've got a ground for white, a black for the running light low power, and then a red for the turn signal higher power. So since this is 18 gauge wire, we're going to run a smaller spade connector, still a 1/4 inch, but for the smaller gauge wire. Now we've got the front bumper all put back together, and we have the wires from the LEDs run over here. And we've gone ahead and made another bundle of cables to run to the inside of the vehicle. That's where we're going to be terminating everything to the turn signal switch and the relay, such in there. So this is pretty straightforward. On the passenger side, we just run black to black, white to white, and red to red. So pretty straightforward. And then we just put some disconnects on there. So then we just simply did tie these together just to keep it a little bit cleaner, and ran it forward to where the factory harnesses go through the bulkhead into the passenger compartment. There are a couple of grommets there that you can run through. This pink wire is another project, so you can ignore that, and we have quite a few other wiring projects going on here. We did get the 4 conductor up to the front area as well, so we'll be running that through the firewall in the same spot. And let's take a look at the driver's side. So on the driver's side, we made a similar bundle. We've got the 3 LEDs and the 3 wires from each LED that we put together earlier. This side is a little different, that we go black to black, white to white, but then we go red to green for this side. We run that forward as well through the same grommet into the passenger compartment. Okay, so we've moved into the passenger compartment on our RZR, and we're looking at the dash above the steering wheel area. And we're going to mount our last 2 LEDs in here. Now this is another option you can get with the kit, either 1 or 2 dash indicator lights. The indicator lights need a 3/8 inch hole to be drilled, and then they just have a nut on the back. They do also include a small amount of extension wire and a couple of butt connectors. We're going to go ahead and still use our heat shrink butt connectors. We'll connect some of the extension wire to these before we place them in the dash, just so that we're not having to deal with trying to work behind the dash, and we've got them extended down a little bit further. As for location, I wanted to go up here towards the top on either side, but I'm concerned about clearance, and also I think it would be near impossible for me to get in there to tighten the nuts on the back. I could possibly use some RTV or something along those lines to seal it in there, but instead we're just going to drop it down a little bit lower to either side, here and here. That'll give us a lot easier access, and we're still really close to the turn signal for wiring everything in. So that wraps up all of the LED mounting and most of the LED wiring. Now all we have to do is do the switch on the column, the turn signal switch, the switch for the LED lights, the flasher module, some of that wiring, which we're going to do in a separate video just to break this up into a couple of parts. So don't forget to put the white nuts on the back of these, although they're fairly decent. They probably wouldn't even fall out without them, but still put them on just for safety's sake, and to make sure they don't wiggle around. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to see future videos, and see you next time to finish up the wiring here.